Did IDW cancel a G.I. Joe title because it listened and caved to angry trolls? I don't think so, but there are definitely some people that believe that is the case. Uh, this whole thing feels very ridiculous to me in the sense that at the end of the day, companies publish comics with hopes of making a profit. That's why they're doing it. It's not a nonprofit business. And if the belief is that the company is not going to make a profit, isn't that their decision to make? Should be. Hey, everybody, this is Perch. A few years ago, there was a case where IDW was publishing a G.I. Joe spinoff book called Scarlett Strike Force, or they were going to publish, I should say. And then it was canceled before it actually, came out. And IDW said it was there were low sales. They couldn't make a profit off of it. And it's hard to argue with that statement, although many did. And why I say it's hard to argue with it is if you look at the sales of IDW's G.I. Joe title prior to this, it wasn't stellar. I think for me, regardless of any of the stuff I'm about to talk about, I would look at this and go, why are they spinning this title off? This title should not be spun off. It doesn't have anywhere close to the sales to warrant a spinoff. This is a bad decision. And then the team that was doing this, it's not like, hey, we're going to spin this off because, Todd McFarlane or Rob Liefeld or some other mega name that just brings readers because of their name is on it. IDW is doing this Snake Eyes book with Rob Liefeld. That's going to generate some strong sales because Rob Liefeld brings sales. Whether you like Rob Liefeld or not, whether you love his artwork or his writing or anything, or you don't, it's a proven fact that Liefeld brings some sales. So a company saying we're going to do a book with Rob Liefeld, shouldn't confuse people. But this book, Scarlett Strike Force, basically the writer of that was a gentleman by the name of Aubrey Sitterson, who has a good wrestling mind, for what it's worth. A lot of people forget that, but he makes good jokes about wrestling. So, it is what it is. Anyway, he was announced as a writer of the title, and then that got kind of immediate, anger from some members of the G.I. Joe community and some people on Twitter. Now, those people were described as being far right, people, and maybe they were, maybe they weren't. I think that is a bit of a red herring to the argument. But why they were angry is that earlier in the year, Sitterson made some comments about September 11th, basically kind of mocking the people who were remembering it. Now, Sitterson has said this was a joke on his part, or who knows. Who knows? Regardless of all that, and I think he apologized, or I think he kind of retracted or walked back his statements. I believe he did. I think this is a case where, and I'm not in his head. I don't know what he was thinking when he was saying this. This isn't me being, overly nice to Sitterson or mean. It felt like, to me, the kind of comment that you make that is designed to be kind of a hot take kind of joke. And it's not funny, and people don't take it as a hot take joke. And I think, they get mad. And by the way, in saying that, no, I am not saying that, people who were mad had no right to be mad. You can be mad whatever you want. It didn't feel like it felt like a dumb hot take post. That's how it felt. I think that, it was dumb hot take post. That's where I'm going with it. And a bunch of people called for boycotts and called for him to be taking off the title and said they weren't going to buy it and everything else. And it certainly had an impact to sales and attention for this spin-off book that, again, like I said, the core title, G.I. Joe, wasn't making huge numbers. So to spin it off, it just didn't seem like a good plan. And so with people making noise, particularly from arguably the core fan base. Now, you have no way of knowing if the people who were complaining actually bought G.I. Joe or not, but enough of the noise was going on G.I. Joe forums and places where G.I. Joe fans were, and we don't know if they were buying comics or not, but, if you're the company, there's at least enough concern to go, yeah, the good potential. This is going to erode our sales further for an already likely weak performing book. And then they cancel the title. So from there, we get into a lot of kind of speculation and further anger. So when the title was canceled, a new group emerged, and a group who dislikes the online trolls or whoever saying, how dare you cancel this person's book? And we get counter anger. So this is where IDW now starts taking it from the other direction, where a group is calling IDW, you caved and you submitted to these trolls, to these bad people. And so now IDW's getting hit on both ends. And so then it's and all the labels get thrown out. The group that was complaining about this is labeled a far right, anti-diversity, white supremacist group. The other side is being identified as the SJW, anger army, woke apocalypse group, and so all this stuff's going on. And then articles start being written that says, hey, the true problem all this was IDW themselves. They didn't promote this project outside of his announcement. They didn't, handle the line well. Again, IDW is handling a lot of their lines poorly, so I'm not sure if this was related to G.I.Joe or just kind of their company in general. And then the comment of the final order cutoff hadn't yet been reached for retailers before the cancellation hits, so IDW must be lying in all this. And then a couple articles got very confused. I think some of the Gizmodo brands got confused and thought it was an Image comic, not an IDW comic, and then they started bashing on Image for stupid reasons. Anyway, Citizen comes out and says he had kind of been blocked from giving comments by IDW, and so this was, he felt like that was unfair and everything else. So big cluster is basically what you're in for. But if you take all that and you kind of move it aside, despite the calls that, hey, IDW caved to a highly vocal group of white supremacists, so they must be bad themselves, I feel like there's a much easier answer here. And the much easier answer is simply this. IDW is not throwing off crazy cash in every direction. They don't have the financial ability to, support these kinds of titles. And so they canceled a book that was looking to underperform, that was a spinoff of an existing underperforming book. And what do you expect? That's my take on it. Now, did this outrage and all the noise and everything else, did it help influence the decision? I'm sure it did a little bit. But again, think about yourself as a publisher. You're a publisher, you're producing a book. It has a very, very thin margin of expected profitability. Your best hopes is that this makes a bit of money, that it doesn't, lose money. That's your best hope. And then in the midst of all this, you start getting people who seem to come from the community that you're targeting with this book, seems to at least come from the G.I.Joe group, and they start saying this is crap and they're not going to buy it and they're going to boycott the line. I mean, what would you do as a publisher? Just bravely go forward and hope it all works out? I mean, sometimes you do that as a publisher, but hopefully you're doing that with at least some level of informed decision or information that suggests that you're going to make the money another way, or that you are going to find a new audience that's going to make it profitable. Because otherwise, if you keep making those decisions, you're going to be out of business. You're going to lose money. And IDW is not the beacon of financial health. So what do you expect is kind of the answer. Now, I'm sure some of this has to do with, when the title was canceled, some of the bigger names, YouTube names, I think the Yellow Flashes, the Diversity in Comic, those guys did videos kind of almost declaring victory to some extent that the title, was canceled. And I'm sure that stings if you were looking forward to that title, but that's kind of irrelevant to IDW's decision. If Yellow Flash likes or hates your book, doesn't really matter if your sales are not there. Do you know what I mean? I mean, the people are getting hooked up on like, oh, we can't give those people a victory. That's a dumb way of looking at it. Those people are not getting a victory. They can make some YouTubes claiming, yay, the book is gone. But at the end of the day, the victory is your bank account. You're either making money or you're not making money. the victory is for IDW in theory not losing money. I think that's the victory. It's people. This is wrapping too many things into this pretty simple topic. But what do you do? I do. These are the cases where I always look at the publisher with some amusement and say, you're just screwed. No matter what you do, you're screwed in this case. And we've seen a lot of examples of that. But at any rate, I bring this up because it was a lot of noise, and in a lot of cases, it's nice to look back in hindsight at these things and recognize like a lot of noise went on around a topic that, at the end of the day, probably was pretty simple. But what about you? What do you think? Do you think that, or first of all, do you believe that IDW caved to online hate trolls and they should have stood firm? And if so, like, well, what if they lost money? Do you think they should have just lost money? Because it's better to lose money than to do something that might align you to bad, people you don't like, to bad people. Like should you be expected to just lose money? And if so, like how long does that go on for? I mean, are you willing to fund companies that are taking good moral stances and losing money in the process? I mean, are you willing to do that? If you're willing to do that, why was G.I.Joe doing so poorly even before this title was canceled? Why? So many whys. Anyway, what do you think about this whole controversy? What do you do? Leave a comment below, like, subscribe, click the bell for notifications, but most importantly, thanks for listening.